Hello, hello. So normally at the beginning of the episode, you'd hear a little clip here, a little snippet of what's to come. But I just wanted to hop in here and tell you that when we first recorded this episode on the Ajna Center, it got a little bit longer than we expected. So in post-production, realized that maybe it was too much information in one episode. So I've decided to break it up into two parts. And so you will be listening next to the first part overview of the Ajna Center. And then our next episode will be all the gates of the Ajna Center. And I hope you enjoy today's show. So let's get into it. Human design reveals who you are energetically and who you came here to be. I'm Dana, human design specialist.
And I'm Haley, the human design newbie. Listen in as we explore how leaning into your authentic self is your ultimate path to success. Welcome to the Human Design Hive podcast. Let's get into it.
Hello, 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 everybody. How you doing, Haley?
Hey, I am good. How are you?
I'm doing really well. And gosh, I can't believe we've done so many of these podcasts now. I mean, I know some people have lots of episodes, hundreds of episodes, but I feel really good about having this many episodes. But, one thing we haven't really done too much on here is really at the beginning of the show is to say, of course, thank you to everybody for listening. And hopefully this isn't, I don't want to say this isn't their first episode, but hopefully you've listened to multiple episodes. And if so, I hope that means you're maybe enjoying the show because we're enjoying making it, aren't you? Yeah, very much. And hopefully everybody thinks we're providing value out there. And so I just wanted to take a moment to kind of remind everybody that if they can, to go ahead and rate the podcast. You don't necessarily have to write a review, but if you could just rate us, and it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to say everything's great, but because we're learning, we're growing. But I do know that the more ratings, reviews that we get kind of helps push the podcast forward to discoverability, basically, because the more people that interact with it, rate it, Apple wants to push it, Spotify, so whatever device platform, that you listen on, if you take a moment to do that, we'd really appreciate it because it helps us get discovered and it helps us help more people. And the whole idea behind the podcast and the Human Design Hive is getting a lot of people informed about all this information and empowering themselves, and so that they can learn to trust themselves and know what they're here to do and how to do it. So just wanted to do that real quick. So it's one order of business.
Let's spread the word,
please. We're still gonna be here, but be nice if even more people were listening. That'd be awesome. And then second thing, I have an update from last week's episode. Which is we were talking about the head center.
Yes.
And we got to the point, I think, there was only 3 gates. It was when we were talking about the gates, and we were talking about what does it mean if you're looking up to the left or to the right? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. You said it meant you were lying. I didn't find any information about it saying.
Yeah, no. I also looked it up yesterday, I think.
Did you?
Because they mentioned it on CSI. She's like, she was looking down and to the left and she was lying. And I was like, oh shit, what is it?
Is it up? Is it down? Is it up?
So I looked it up and it basically said there's no evidence.
Right. And so what I did find, though, is that looking up, rolling the eyes upwards does have an effect on the brain. It's an automatic response that it's an automatic response that your body makes when it's trying to access information.
You just did it.
Did I?
Yeah.
Well, that's probably why my eyes are rolled up so much, because I'm trying to access information. But so yeah, trying to find lost or hidden information in the brain. And it says that you do that for 2 reasons. One is because it starts producing alpha waves. This even closing the eyes helps create more alpha wave state in your brain, which is a calming state.
Mm.
But then also the like looking up, um, it basically takes out the visual field in front of you of what you're looking at,
Oh.
so it won't interfere with that those pieces in your brain. The like
Mm-hmm.
we were talking about the gate 64, where you're just seeing chunks and fragments of
Mm-hmm.
memory or whatever. You're not competing visually with what's in front of you with what you're trying to find in your mind.
Oh.
And so I was like, that's interesting. So, that being said, if you want to help produce, get in that calmer state, which is also, while you meditate, whatever, you close your eyes because it does like shut down that visual component of what's outside of
Mm-hmm.
you and being stimulated by everything. But I find, yeah, I have to close my eyes a lot when I want to concentrate on something, not like reading, but sometimes I think I've done it here when I'm talking to you on the podcast, when I'm
Uh-huh.
trying
You
to
have.
like get my thoughts straight as I'm talking. I have to
You'll
close
say a
my
whole sentence sometimes with your eyes closed.
That's how easily I'm distracted. That I can be like, oh, look, there's a bird outside the window. I think just now, as we started to talk about this, I was like, oh, it's raining. It started raining while we were here. So, so they also say the alpha waves kind of like that daydream wavelength. It is because it's a nice relaxed between like waking and sleeping, so it calms it down. Obviously, it's not instantaneous, like, but does help. So, anyways, that's
What would you define as daydreaming?
what would I define as daydreaming?
Because like I don't feel like I daydream ever, but then I don't know if like how I think about it is like more rigid, maybe. I don't know.
Well, I think maybe the term daydreaming has kind of a fanciful connotation to it. Like it means like you're envisioning some fantasy life, but
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's like your mind wandering, maybe. Um, Wishful thinking, maybe sometimes they call daydreaming, but like I said, that makes it like um sound like silly and fanciful, or if that's a word. We could have a whole
Fantastical.
podcast. We could have a whole podcast called "Is that a word?"
We'd have like 7 episodes by now.
I know. Is that a word? Did I use that right? Could be. I mean, visualizing, is that daydreaming? I mean, it could be. I mean, because you can intentionally visualize, but also I think when we talk about a lot of this stuff and the energy of things and using emotional energy to um, manifest things in your outer reality, you could say daydreaming could be a component of that, because I think it's Abraham Hicks says, you know, by looking at what is, that's not necessarily going to help you, because
Hmm.
your quote unquote reality around you is not always going to help you. But imagining, or, quote unquote daydreaming about what it is you would like it to be, or, I mean, let's say when you said you were looking at earlier this week possible honeymoon locations.
Hmm.
I mean, there might have been an element of daydreaming in that, correct? You're kind of picturing yourself there, thinking about, oh, what would it really be like? It'd be really nice to be here, be there. That's kind of
I
daydreaming,
mean,
I
I guess
think.
kind of.
Yeah. I mean, you don't.
Well, I guess maybe like the uh definition or whatever of daydreaming I have is like anytime like in a movie they're like daydreaming and then they get like snapped back or whatever. So it's like this whole like actual lost in space. And I don't know if I just
Well, if that were the
maybe I am
case,
doing it.
I think you're doing it a lot.
Well, I was gonna say, maybe I'm just doing it so much that I don't realize it.
It's your
my,
natural state.
my brain does kind of just wander.
Yeah, maybe you are.
I really have to focus when we're recording.
God knows. Yeah, I know. Sometimes I'm like, is she really listening? Uh huh. Uh huh.
I am, but then sometimes I'll get stuck on a thought and then I'm like, no, I have to pay attention.
Yeah. So maybe you are just daydreaming. You just don't know it.
It's just more of my natural state.
What about nighttime dreaming? Do you feel like you dream?
Mm-mm.
No, you don't have memory?
Nope.
Hmm.
I've had more dreams recently that are like wedding stress dreams, but they're like the same combination of things.
Yeah.
But I don't really remember my dreams.
Hmm. I feel like for some reason I'm the only one in the family that seems to remember dreams. Your dad's always like, no. Ian says no. I haven't asked Lakeland. Maybe she does. A lot of people I know don't remember dreams. I mean, and that's the other thing. Your dad has this perception that um, I literally see everything in my head, like pictures and understanding things and dreams. I'm like, no, they're just most of the dreams you remember are really just fragments, and they're also just feelings. Almost is more
Mm-hmm.
of what the feeling it was carrying. Because I'll wake up with a certain feeling, and there might have like one or two mental images attached to it. But then, the harder you try to find it, it's like, no, it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
It's
And it's
gone.
like if you do remember it, something as soon as you wake up, if you like don't ponder on it, it's
Hmm.
just gone, and you'd be like, I think I had a dream.
So quickly. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
so quickly. It's just whoop, gone. But, which brings us to what we're talking about today, which is the Ajna Center. We are
Good
approaching the
segue.
last of the thanks. getting my getting my podcasting legs under me here. Um the Ajna Center, which we often relate to as the mind, which we did, like we said, the head center before.
Mm-hmm.
But when we're talking about the ajna, we're really, or the mind, I should say, we're really talking essentially about the head and the ajna functioning together.
Mm-hmm.
Because even if you have defined, undefined, I mean, we all have a brain, we all have a mind. We are talking about energy centers here and how
Mm-hmm.
they function, but they do sort of work in tandem, obviously. And so when we talked about the head last week, we talked about how it was this connection point to source, or Gus, God,
Gus.
source, universe, and God, universe, source.
God, universe, source.
I just mumbled that, and I can't wait to see what that looks like in the transcription.
I said
Um,
universe.
a unihorse is like a different form of unicorn. It's a unihorse.
Said
Also,
universe.
also because this week is the Ajna Center, how many times I'll have to
Oh.
correct that word. I put it in the glossary as a term, but we'll see if it follows. But the Ajna is the processing hub, basically, that takes all that information, the questioning, the ideas, the inspiration from the head center,
Mm-hmm.
and takes all that stuff and basically reviews, researches, and tries to it's like an interpreter, basically, of what the information that's coming in. It's trying to like make sense of it. And so
Mm-hmm.
it is really that center of conceptualizing, thinking. It's literally your mental processing is how you do it, lives in the Ajna Center. And this mental center, it's more mental, it's the thinking, is pretty much what dominates our world right now, is using all of our mental processing to try to make sense of stuff.
Yeah, we're doing a great job of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's trying to, I mean, it rules our lives and, our perception of ourselves and everything around us, but it's shifting. It's a good thing. The mind has a lot of, the ajna, the mind has a lot of really good use. Obviously, it's gotten us to where we are in the sense that
Mm-hmm.
we have, it is an awareness center. We move from that splenic instinctual body awareness, and we move to this more mental awareness, which is more dominant, or not more dominant, it's a little stronger than the splenic awareness. But it's the mind, like I said, when it's trusted or valued for what it's designed for, which is to like research, review, mull over, it's
Mm-hmm.
good, but it's not good for making decisions in your life, which we're going to talk about in a minute. Biologically, I know you like this part.
Mm-hmm.
The ajna correlates to the neocortex, and visual cortex and the pituitary glands.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, say pituitary for me.
Pituitary.
It's one of those tricky words.
Mm-hmm.
Which the pituitary
What?
glands
Uh-huh.
basically send information gathered to the hormonal information to the thyroids, which then helps regulate the endocrine system, all that stuff that helps us keep on track alive and all that other stuff. So that's the pituitary
All,
gland.
all that non-necessary stuff.
Well, you can see where my interest truly lies, which is in
The
energy and
energy.
yeah, the more spiritual side of us than our actual like physical bodies, but they're important. They're important, but
They keep us alive.
they do. I mean, without it, we're not here. Without our bodies, we are literally not here. So
True statement.
they keep us anchored in this world, at least for now. And it is pouring raining outside right now.
It is
Just
not raining here yet, but
no,
it's pretty dark.
yeah, it's pouring, which is nice. I love a rainy evening. Anyways, so as I said, Ajna is that as an awareness center. And I also said the spleen is an awareness center. Do you know what the other
Uh-huh.
one is?
The solar plexus.
Yay! Oh, I haven't given you a gold star in a while.
Yee.
There you go. You get one. Right. So we had this splenic awareness, instinctive body awareness
Mm-hmm.
in the moment. We also, which this is then the mental awareness of the ajna is twice as strong as the um, splenic awareness. Is why we became these more mental creatures.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the energy is strong there, and it's still forming as an awareness center, the solar plexus, because we are moving from this heavily mental awareness of making decisions and how we do things, moving towards the solar plexus more. The mutation that occurred back in 1781 when it
Mm-hmm.
split, it's been working all this time, and this culmination is building, and I think into this more emotional awareness. And they say that emotional awareness is twice as strong as the mental awareness, so it's like
Ooh.
dominant. Yeah, we're moving to that dominant awareness center, but we're still um, very much operating from this mental awareness, which is really interesting because when you look at the whole, how much things have changed, even in your lifetime that you're not aware of, because you know you were little, but 20
Mm-hmm.
years, 20, 30 years that, um, especially the last 20 years, how much has come to the forefront of what people are accepting as normal. I mean, you start hearing about in business the emotional intelligence, your
Mm-hmm.
EQ, people being more aware of how they're feeling and their well-being, being more of a marker, people following their heart, following their
Mm-hmm.
desires, doing things instead of just,
More mental health stuff.
well, yeah, but I mean, moving away from reasoning and logic, because we use that for so long, which is important. It definitely
Mm-hmm.
has its place, but they say as we move closer to 2027, this other mutation that's supposed to happen in our energy centers, I think around us, people are much more aware of how they're feeling and how they want to feel,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of learning to use the mind as it should be, as a tool, as something that helps you in the process. But
Mm-hmm.
ultimately you have to do what feels best for you, which is also
Right.
what we're doing here in the first place on this podcast, is trying to teach people about this stuff so that they can start tuning into that awareness more and know what's right for them, and
Mm-hmm.
learning to trust yourself more. And that's where we're moving. But the thing we've also seen in the system is like there's value in things that have been learned, and that
Mm-hmm.
we just move forward, but doesn't mean we have to throw everything out. So we're
Right.
always going to use our minds. I mean, that's what makes us human, I think, is,
Mm-hmm. It
being
is
able.
interesting that moving, like you said, from the spleen to the mind, it was two times, the mind was two times stronger, and then
Mhm.
transitioning to the solar plexus, it's gonna be
It's
two
going to be even
times
stronger.
stronger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Poor spleen's just getting knocked down.
Well, they said I was doing some. I think it was in the original human design book. That it shows you how fragile that splenic awareness is, and how easy it is for us to, since that mind does have dominance more over that, um, how easy it is for us to override those signals that we get from our spleen center. It's there to tell us in the moment, speaks once, this is what's best for you right now. And we
Mhm.
have really learned to like override that
It's
because
not paying attention.
right, we all get those impulses, but I mean, okay, 25 years ago, if you tried to tell people you had an intuitive hit,
They would have thought
even
you
if
were
you do it
insane.
now, yeah, in some circles, you do that now and they're like, "Oh, you're too woo
You're
woo. I
full of
bet you."
shit.
Yeah, we believe in all this other, and there's no credence to it. But that's basically what that awareness center is that intuitive awareness that we definitely have downgraded as a society, thinking the mind knows
Mhm.
more, which it does not, which if this was a visual component, you see how I just scrunched up my face. Say the mind knows more. No, it doesn't. Trust me, I'm in my head a lot. I'm happy, I'm comfortable up there, but it's not always good for me. So basically, like I said, this the Ajna, the awareness center, is basically pressured from the head center,
Mhm.
right? With all that information coming through.
Mhm.
To take all that, like we said, all the ideas, inspirations, turn it into, thoughts, concepts, and then try to express them through language in the throat.
Mhm.
So obviously it sits between the head center and the throat center.
Mhm.
And so it also notes that this awareness center, the head, the ashta, is not connected and cannot be connected directly to a motor, because like the
Right.
spleen can connect to the root or to the sacral, and same with solar
The
plexus
ajna can only go to the throat
or the head.
or the head. Yeah.
Yeah. So that means that those other two awareness centers are able to act on their awareness, whereas this one not. There's no action here. This is very important.
It says no,
No action here, right? So,
and yet we use it all for all the action.
mhm, that's right. And so I say the awareness from the spleen, um, is that in the moment decision making. They say the solar plexus is more clarity over time. There's the
Mhm.
waves, and then the ajna is the mental awareness that operates over all time, which
Mm.
was hard for me to wrap my ajna around at first. But it says that a decision made mentally has a long life and can be mulled over until death, which I take it to mean what it means is this is where beliefs are formed.
Mhm.
So, uh, like I said in Abraham Hicks always saying, a belief is just a thought that you continue to think. And so
Oh,
the ajna is also where all these everything gets filtered through the ajna, basically,
right.
because that's what it does. It's your thoughts, it's how you think. And so that awareness is, when it says overall time, is that if you keep over and over and over again, that's what it does. And so also when you make if you try to make a decision based
Mhm.
on what your mind says, it's it's basically a this or that kind of thing. It's always, as soon as you choose option A, it says, well, what about option B? Or what about option C? Whenever you're like, that's it, that's what I'm going to do. And if you haven't checked in with your strategy authority, your body, and you're like, this is it. And then you're like, I think we're all familiar with second guessing. That is basically what it does, right?
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah. Because remember, this is conceptualizing, it's research and review. And what is review? It's like weighing both sides of an argument.
Mhm.
That's what it's there for. It's to analyze, do all these things. And like I said, it can tell you something is good because, it can give you a pro con list all day long.
Mm-hmm.
Pros and cons. It can always give you reasons for why something's good. It can give you reasons why something's bad, but it doesn't really have any
It may not be
authority.
true.
Right.
It's just what
Right.
you think
Yeah.
is good or bad about it.
Yeah, it's thinking, it's interpreting answers as opinion and concepts and theories. And so, like I said, it cannot be the authority in your life. And you might say, I do want to say that when you're talking about authority in the human design, there are
Mhm.
people, mental projectors, who are people that only have definition, head and ajna, nothing below that. Still doesn't mean the mind makes the decision for them. They are
Mhm.
designed to speak out loud, to mull over, to talk to someone else as a sounding board, not to get advice from people, but they're designed to basically get those ideas, thoughts, concepts out of the mind, out into the world, and then they can kind of feel into it more of what it is they need to do to make a decision. Does that make sense? It's not
Mhm.
um it's still not, the ajna is still not making the decision for them.
Right.
It is just when they can hear it spoken and reflected back to them, when people can say, oh, well, this is what I'm hearing you saying, so you think this, blah blah blah, and then it helps
Mhm.
them gain clarity over their
And then they,
decision.
instead of using the mind, still it's more of listening to what else your
Yeah.
body says.
Yeah, and being able to hear out loud what it is that you've been mulling around in your brain.
And then you're like, well,
Basically.
that's not quite what I was
Yeah.
meaning. And then you're like,
Yeah.
is that really?
Yeah. And so like you're, I would say a lucky splenic projector, because you do have that everyday um advantage of having that extra instinct, intuitive awareness of helping you make those smaller decisions in life, but still most projectors need to talk things out anyhow with trusted people to hear what they have to say. Okay. So let's just move on. So the defined Ajna Center, that
Mhm.
is 47% of the population.
Ooh.
That's you and I. We're both defined. You're defined, right? Yeah, because you're
Mhm.
defined head and Ajna.
I do.
So a defined Ajna obviously can be defined either through the head or the throat or both. You are defined through the head. I'm defined through the throat. So we do have a different configuration there of how it works. And so those with defined Ajna centers pretty much think and conceptualize in the more consistent way all the time. Like we have a certain
Mhm.
particular way of processing information. It's going to want to come out one way. And it's not just one way, but we can be more fixed
It's
in
more
our
set
thinking.
ways.
Yeah. Yeah. There'll be a way you more prefer to look at things. Like my definition comes through the 4323 to the throat,
Mhm.
but I have also gate 4, which reads hanging gate,
Mhm.
and it's part of the logic circuitry. And so I do tend to, I do kind of have this struggle a lot of times between the knowingness of the 4323 and the logic. The logic wants to dominate all the time. It wants to like make logical sense of things, but
Mhm.
or I'll have a knowingness and I can just feel it and I know it, but my 4 wants to always
It's like, why?
make it
How do you know this?
right. What does it mean? How did you, yeah, oh, yeah, logic. For sure. That's how it can conflict, I guess. And for you, I can't believe I don't have you pulled up.
I always pull my graph up. It also helps when
Because
you're talking about things for me to
yeah,
see it.
and because mine is connected to the throat, I designed to speak what's on my mind.
Mhm.
Whereas yours, it's harder for you at times to get out what's out of your head and to
All the
speak it.
time.
Yeah. You definitely probably need some help with those around you to help get those thoughts out.
Mhm. Yeah. And being around Ian makes it worse because I'm usually trying to get out a joke or something that we
Hmm.
like both have, but I'm trying to get it out before he does. And then I just
Good
get
luck.
my words all twisted. So then it doesn't
Good
work.
luck. Good luck. Because I think he has a defined throat. Yes, he does. Because he also has the 4323. Yeah.
Hmm.
But you also have this mix of gates because you have that full channel 6447. We're going to go into all the gates here in a second. I say in a second, like it's going to happen in the next 10 seconds. I think we all know better by now. But you have so the 47, which is a channel. So that's the you are more abstract thinker. Maybe, like we said, chunking pieces. You don't always have the language for it. Then you also have the 43. So there is some knowingness there, although you may not trust that knowingness because it is in your unconscious design side. And then gate 17, which we're going to talk about that too, which is part of that logical circuitry as well. So you have all aspects there of the sensing, the logical, and the knowingness there. So no wonder your brain's so busy you don't realize that you're always using your brain.
It's just always gone.
Your mental
Always gone.
faculties. But so with this defined ajna means that the defined ajna tends to put pressure on undefined ajnas to think and to conceptualize, and quite often influence the way other people think if they are, definitely if they're undefined there. It's funny because I have notes that I'm always referring to because I need to. And you're probably always thinking, processing it, whether you realize it or not. So there you go, Haley. Maybe that's your daydream. You don't even realize you're doing it.
Probably. I'm just
If you have a defined ajna, it may be more difficult to meditate. Not impossible, because I certainly can, but it comes with a lot of non-effort. I was going to go to when I meditate, close your eyes, obviously, but I have to literally say, I catch myself all the time thinking. I'll say thinking because I'll realize I'm thinking. I do that all the time. You try to clear your mind. And lately I've been listening to some brown noise, which is very soothing. And I never know when there's going to be noise in the house, and it can be a lot easier to be distracted, but I put those noise canceling headphones on and whew. But the mind is always busy. And I will realize I am thinking, and I will literally say in my head, thinking, you're thinking. And it brings me back to be like, okay, you don't have to just let it go. Because I know you said you have a hard time doing anything like that, right? You tried meditating?
No, I say I want to, but then I never do.
Well, I mean, meditation really is what we're talking about a lot of times. It gets confused a lot. I'm not confused, but kind of blended with mindfulness. And it's definitely worth trying to incorporate at least just 5 minutes at the start of your day, if you can, of before we were talking about, like, don't automatically, you said getting out of bed and you kind of like, if you try to remember a dream and it's do something else, it's gone. But where you start in the day with your mind carries with you the rest of the day. It's a good way to put it. So starting from a more centered place, always helps. But people with defined ajna with a lot of mental activity, especially if they're head in ajna, could benefit from a mindfulness practice form of meditation, which, movement, nature, anything that can even journaling can be a form of that, because it's helping you to kind of slow down the thoughts, or maybe just not trying to analyze and think. Let things drift. Let things just kind of drift through your head. Maybe you're in a constant state of meditation.
I mean, I think sometimes when I'm falling asleep, I do kind of just drift, and like my thoughts,
alpha waves.
They just kind of like I just go from one thought to the next, and then I have before, like, when I get to that thought and I realize like what I've been doing, I'm like, how did I get here? And then I will go back through and figure out how I got there.
That helps you go to sleep.
And then I fall asleep. Yeah.
I think that would wake me up. I'd be like, oh, I'm using my brain. So no matter what defines your ajna, you people with defined ajnas can be a little headstrong, have a little tendency to make decisions, like we said, from the mind, which can lead to really sometimes a lot of times of inadequacy or even hypocrisy. If like what you say, you can't follow through on what you say.
Mm-hmm.
It's like speaking when you shouldn't speak your mind. But I'm learning that. And you can become over reliant on your mind and tend to waste a lot of energy obsessing about things that just, a decision or anything. And then you kind of get stuck in that mind space. And so, yeah, mind dominant here, but should not be like reliant on it. You've still got to let things go out of the mind. So with the undefined ajna center, which then would
Mm-hmm.
be 50%, 53% of the population, interestingly enough, it's pretty obvious, but if you have an undefined ajna, you're
Mm-hmm.
gonna have an undefined head because,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that's how that works.
The head only connects to the ajna.
That's right. And then the ajna does not connect to any motor. So that should tell you right there that anything happening in the mind is not to be acted on
Mm-hmm.
by itself. So if you have an undefined ajna, you could still have defined gates, activated gates, in the
Mm-hmm.
ajna. And if you do, then those gates are going to be more of a, the themes of those gates are going to be more of a filter through which you do tend to, uh, how it's going to connect you. Themes that for the way our mental activity is going to connect us to people and who we interact with. So obviously, because a hanging gate, it's electromagnetics, right? It's going to,
Mm-hmm. Unless it's
try to
other
hook up.
half.
Hmm. Yeah, but it's going to be more of a filter. You can still be what they say undefined heads are more open-minded, literally, because they don't
Mm-hmm.
have fixed ways of thinking. But they may have, when they connect with that energy sometimes, or just when they are processing it, has a little more of a tendency to lean that way with those gaze. But there's people with completely open heads, completely open minds, which literally they're very, very open-minded.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. So it's interesting because I think a lot of people that have open ajnas can tend to feel a certain sense of what would be the word, like, because they're not designed to really think in one specific way and they're very open minded, they can see everything from every angle. Like, they're not meant necessarily to retain all this information. They don't have a fixed way of doing things, of thinking about things. So it
Mm-hmm.
also means it's a little bit more difficult, I think, to create those patterns and those grooves of how you remember things. Like, things move through you in your open centers. They're designed
Mm-hmm.
that way. You reflect it back to others. And so you know where I'm going with this, I think.
I think so.
Where am I going with this?
Daddy always says you can't remember things.
I know. But these are highly creative minds. These are the
He's so
great,
creative.
yeah, these are great, thinkers. When you think about, the real intellectuals and deep thinkers, we're talking about like Freud and Jung and Einstein, the undefined ajnas. They were allowed to look at things from all different angles and
Mm-hmm.
turn it over and see it in all different ways and be open to certain ideas and inspirations. They are literally open-minded, and
Yeah.
that is their power there, because that's where they become wise about how we think and why we think and what we think. That's they do. But yeah, your dad, I would try to tell him all the time, because that's a big bone of contention for him, is that,
Mm-hmm.
or what he feels is his Achilles mind, is he feels he has a weak
His
mind.
Achilles mind.
Did I say that?
Yeah.
That's funny. His Achilles mind. Achilles heel. Man, I was landing that point and then I messed it up. But he sees it as a weakness. He thinks he has a
Mm-hmm.
weak mind because he's um I think he's also dyslexic, and I don't have any science or, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not on anything. I only have my opinions about these things, but I think that, without having a lot of structure there in his mind, it was harder for him to retain information,
Mm-hmm.
but it's there. He just has so many different ways of thinking about things. But like you said, he is like so creative and he's brilliant.
Yeah.
Like I always tell people all the time, he feels inadequate. And I'm like, you're like the
No,
smartest person I know.
he could fix anything. He can do just about anything.
He
He's
can literally
always,
see everything from every, like, that's what
I
makes him
know.
so good at building and fixing. He can
Yeah.
see all the
He'll
different.
come if you're doing something, he'll come in 2 seconds in, he'd be like, oh, I wouldn't have done it that way. And you're like, what other way? You're like, I see one way to do it. What do you mean you would do it a different
Hmm.
way?
Yeah, he does. Or he'll just let you, yeah, let you do it. Why'd you do it like that? Well,
I'll let you finish and then he says it.
yeah, that's so true. So, yeah, so then if you are undefined, like I said, you're amplifying, reflecting back, you become wise in these areas. So you're able to sift through all the different ways of seeing things, all the different
Hmm.
possibilities, and decide really what matters most. And you're able to discern a lot of times what concepts and ideas have value and recognize. I mean, like I said, just look at these great thinkers who answered some of the great questions that we have pondered for forever. A lot of these
Hmm.
people were open-minded. um Open ajnas are people that can often pick up what's happening in the group, can pick up the thoughts and ideas from someone or in a group before they actually speak them aloud, which is also very true. And they say in children, they may have also been grown or may have grown up with ideas which really seem to come from nowhere, which they kind of did. They just kind of pop in their head,
Hmm.
and they can have a bit of conditioning around this need to feel certain about things in order, and trying to appear like somebody dad trying to appear smart or fear looking stupid, or that you have to pretend to be certain about things. Because if you have a defined head, you have a certain amount of certainty that you can with a, I mean, Ajna, sorry, because of how you are fixed in your thinking. But these are
Hmm.
people, like I said, things are just always kind of popping in and out, and they're not always certain, but they're not designed to be certain. They're
Hmm.
not designed to know the way to think about it. So there can be a lot of um, stigma there for these people, because if you had a child who had an undefined ajna, which I do not, but I have a husband. But if they had a parent who's defined ajna,
Hmm.
um, then that, at the energetic level, that parent's thinking and process of thinking and how they do things is mentally pressuring the undefined ajna at all times. And so maybe the parent had a lot of logical dominance in their
Hmm.
thinking, but this child may not, and they might think in a more abstract way, or their mind might,
Hmm.
but there was this pressure to always be logical. And so that you start to doubt how you think about things and what you think about things. And it really is important, I think, to see a lot of these things in your kids, to understand how they're meant to operate, so we don't try to push them into operating a different way.
Hmm.
So one note on, well, when we talked about the undefined mind, I know I said it many times, I probably said open, but undefined head means it's a undefined center. You see my eyes are closed, I'm trying to get it straight in my head. Undefined, but you may have gates there. A completely open ajna has no gates, no
No
definition.
definition.
And this can be even more challenging sometimes, because it can be really, there is no like mental filter that things are going to get filtered through when there is,
Hmm.
connections or whatever. And so it can be a little more challenging, because you are seeing every angle to everything. It can be hard to organize your thoughts, because there's no like reliable fixed way of looking at something.
Hmm.
So it could leave them with, maybe they might tend to have a little more anxiety um,
Mm.
around the whole mental process. Well, there you have it. Overview of the Ajna Center. As I said, throwing the gates in here too would just be a little too much to add into one episode. Want to break it up a little bit for you guys. So come back for our next episode when we're going to walk through the gates of the Ajna Center and kind of bring it all together for you. So thanks for listening. You made it all the way to the end of today's episode, so you must have liked what you heard. If you did, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode, and perhaps leave us a good review. And if you know someone who wants to dig into all things human design with us, make sure you share the Human Design Hive podcast with them. We'd really appreciate it. Thanks for listening.